Hey everyone, it's Book of Katherine. Welcome to take 3 of my December 2019 post of big research. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the Rothschilds and their empire. I have written a rather extensive thread on them and their links to BASF and the chemical company that pollutes the world and their ties to history all the way back to 1865. And what's interesting is that that family crest has been linked all over the internet and the web as being their family crest. This family crest has been said that this is their family crest. And people break it down and they say, oh, this is linked to the KKK, all these sorts of things. But when I did that post, there were some ripples in the insider community that I didn't understand, and I couldn't get anyone to talk about it. It was people that were kind of out in my back rows, and I couldn't get anyone to talk about it. I couldn't get any digging going on it. I couldn't get anyone to talk about it. And so it just stuck in the back of my mind that I hit something there, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I was just like, well, I'll just stick in the note in the back of my head that there's something about that Rothschild crest, and there's something about BASF there that's important. That people didn't want me going anywhere near, and I just want to pay attention to that if I ever came across it again. Be aware of that was something no one wanted me going near, and I didn't know why. I thought it was a big enough discovery on its own, that, BASF was polluting the world and that it was tied to a banking family, and that, not to mention the fact that the Rothschilds weren't considered to be Jews by Nazi standards. Nazi standards said you had to be only so many times removed. You had to be like a pureblood Jew by this many. And the Rothschilds, by their own admission, they go all the way back to like early 1500s or something like that, or 1599. Somewhere in the 1500s is their Jewish descent. So they didn't qualify at all as Jews in the Nazi history. So anyway, but it turns out that their crest doesn't have that crest that they circulate on the internet to their benefit, I must say. It actually covers up the families that are really actually linked to the mining and who are really profiting off the mining around the world and the empire that really controls the world. And it's the empires that I've already been linking for you guys on Twitter. It goes into all of our research. It really finally culminates all the research and explains a lot of the research that we've been finding. We've been finding all this research, like linking us to Italy and the Holy Roman Church, and wondering why it is that so much mirrors a pagan religion, why none of the churches mention Christ or the Holy Trinity in the name. They all mention saints, or they mention the Madonna, or anything but like Church of the World, but none of them say anything that the Protestant churches do, which are like Holy Trinity or Holy Ghost or Holy Father or anything referring to the God that they worship. The Catholic Church doesn't do that. All of the churches are named around anything but the actual God it says. They say scholars refer to it as Christian church, but there's no mention of Christ on any name of any Catholic church globally. And even when we pointed out churches, when you go to them, the only time you'll find Christ inside of Catholic church is when they're hung on a Roman cross, which is exactly what the Romans did. I mean, a Roman emperor would be absolutely thrilled with that. And the Christian faith is based on what happened after that, like not on the crucifixion, but what happened after. Like tons of people were hung on the cross by the Roman Empire. They created crucifixion. They invented the act. So that's not anything special at all. That means nothing except for, hey, we're the guys that got the ones that Christians love. I mean, if it's a temple to that, great. If it's a temple to Roman cruelty, great. They do a great job at that. As far as what they bend and kneel and worship to, that's actually Mary, which is they take their rosary beads and they bend and kneel to that. I was raised in the Catholic Church. First thing I had to get for my first communion was rosary beads. That was the first thing I was required to buy, was rosary beads, and pray to the Holy Mary. That's what I had to do, was actually hold each rosary bead and pray to Mary. And I remember being confused about that because I was like, that's my first rite and ritual, is I need to pray to Mary, like pray to Mary. And I was just like, but if we're praying to God, like I remember it was such a mean church. It made you so fearful of God. And I got confused because I was like, I'm supposed to be so scared of this God guy. Why would you make me pray to anyone but that God guy? They made me so terrified of this God figure, and this God figure hanging on a cross. I was so terrified of this, idea and picture of God, just terrified by that picture, that I was actually scared that I was praying to anyone but that guy. But they didn't have anything in the church, actually, ritual-wise, to actually pray to that God, which is very interesting, looking back on it now. And now I see all the pictures, and it's all kneeling, even to the flip side of it, which is Our Lady of Death. Even when they pray to the Lady of Death, it's still a lady. So it's very, very interesting. And some people even say the Catholic Church is like the Antichrist, which I don't agree with at all, now that we've been doing research on Twitter. So I think all the evidence points somewhere else. Just if you follow my Twitter, it doesn't actually fall in line with everything. But maybe if you try and fit things in, you can try and make anything fit in, right? But you have to kind of, anyway, I was like, well, what does that, if you want to make stuff fit or whatever, I just know it was a fun night of digging. We had a lot of fun online digging one night. Anyway, so, let's go ahead and look at what I have and where I went with it. It's late. It's like 2 a.m. or whatever. And I'm not going to sleep until I share this with you. So why don't we just get into it and you guys can see what you think. Hopefully you'll just stick this in your ear and listen to it as a podcast. But then again, I'm going to show you evidence. You can take with it what you will. So I'm going to start with what got me on this idea and changed my idea about the Rothschilds and who they really are. I mean, in the end, I basically found out that the Queen Mother of England is German. I was like, what? Yeah, the Queen of England's German. The House of Windsor is German. Didn't know the House of Windsor was German. Didn't know the House of Windsor was German. And they do a really good job of covering that up. They go like the House of Belgium. And then you have to dig and you find out, oh, Belgium means German. Like, you have to, like, they have all these nice fancy ways of like, well, and that means this, and that means this. It's like doing math, you know what I mean? Like, they have all these amazing ways. It's like researching Cleopatra's Needles. That took forever. That took 2 days of digging to find out that they call all of them Cleopatra's Needles. And that, oh, it turns out that, the first Roman, well, he calls himself the first Roman emperor, but Octavius Augustus, yeah, it's not Cleopatra's Needle that he ripped out of Egypt. They all say, oh, we're so mean, like, for taking out, for America, taking all these things away from Egypt. No, our Cleopatra's Needle was actually given to us. It was a gift from Egypt. We actually have the cards of them saying, we're giving it to you for doing the Suez Canal. We gave them the Suez Canal, and in thank you, they gave us the needle behind the Metropolitan Museum. Like, it was an actual trade. Rome, on the other hand, there were like dozens of obelisks. And like the moment, like, because Cleopatra had done all that stuff, like Rome conquered everything in that entire Mediterranean region except for Egypt and like the Nile. And he was just like, and she prevented it. She prevented it because she went and she got with Caesar, and then she got with Julius Caesar, prevented it all. Did her thing, she got on, she had a kid with Mark Antony or with Caesar. Yeah, don't know it that well. So she had kids and stuff like that with them or whatever. And Octavius, by the time he came along, he was just like, screw that, I'm taking Egypt. And she knew it too. So she tried to, defend it against him, but he came on through. And when he was done, like taking them out and defeating her army, and even defeating his own army because she was with Mark Antony, he freaking ripped out Ramses II needle. He ripped out the obelisk dedicated to Ramses II and declared himself Pharaoh of Egypt. That's why there's little pharaohs of him in Egypt. He was the one that started pillaging Egypt. He was the first one to ever pillage Egypt. Rome ripped out all but 8 obelisks. There were dozens. Dozens, and Wikipedia won't tell you that. They sure do protect Rome. And they just ripped them out and put them all over. And you know what's so fascinating about that? Is after the Roman emperors put them all throughout Rome, Ramses the Second, why that's impressive is because I'm getting off on things, is that Ramses the Second was like the greatest pharaoh of all. He was like the guy. And he conquered like the house. He was like the guy. And he was like, I'll take that one. Just so all of Egypt knew, like, you lost your obelisk, like you're big guy, I'm the big guy now. I'm the king. And they no longer had a monument to their greatest ruler of all time. He was like, they think, because they believed that their pharaohs were God. And he's like, not a god. I'm the son of God. That's what he called himself. Octavius Augustus called himself the son of God, which is another reason Jesus came along in that rule. Very interesting, because Jesus called himself the son of God. And it's just kind of like, oh, interesting. No one talks about it. They all talk about Pontius Pilate. And I'm like, anyone want to talk about what Caesar Augustus thought about the fact that somebody else was walking around in Jerusalem going like, I'm the son of man, I'm the son of God? Like, that have anything to do with the crucifixion? Anybody? Anyway. So let's go on to how I figured out this House Windsor in Germany and the mining and everything like that. Because there is a reason. Did anyone know that, you know why Australia got settled? Anyone want to talk about that? Like the Revolutionary War with America and all of her 13 colonies, that ended in 1783. You know when Australia got settled? First ship landed 1788. It wasn't a penal colony. Just oops, our Revolutionary War, America becomes free in 1783, and oh, look at that, they settle Australia in 1788. And miraculously, the Rothschilds become, it's just very, very interesting. So anyway, let's get started on how I began. So anyway, I have been watching Hozier, right? Okay, so what I want you to notice, if you ever seen this... All right, so the reason I got onto it is because, gosh, he doesn't look so well in this one. But this is where he's... All right, so... All right, I'm putting you here. So the point is that if you've ever seen, like, I've heard a lot of Hozier's music, but not watched it, right? And because I'm doing the stretches upstairs, I see a lot more of the videos now. And so I'm watching these videos and I'm like, why does Hozier get a pass? Like, I'm realizing how much music is done by him. And I'm watching this Subway video and I'm like, it's all white people in it. His entire video is white people. It's all white people. His entire subway, underground subway is just white. He casts entirely, like, it's almost entirely white people all the time. And I'm like, no one comes after him. No one comes after him. And his partner, the other reflecting one, seems to be Regina Spektor. These two artists are going around and they just seem to write love songs. They seem to write love songs and they seem to be allowed to talk about love and they seem to be allowed to get all sexy and they seem to be allowed to do all these things that other artists that we say are not allowed to be done. And when I'm like, well, gosh, if they're allowed to do all these things that the loudspeaker is saying they're not allowed to do, but yet these artists go out and do them. People who are dying for it and thirsting for it, they go on or whatever. Like, I was just kind of like, oh, nice love songs. Oh, it's so nice to hear love songs. And then I'm watching it and I'm like, wait a minute. Like, now I'm watching it and I'm like, whoa, like, where's the diversity, right? Like, where's the diversity? And I was just trying to figure out, like, now I'm watching more. And then I finally figured it out tonight. Like, I think I figured it out. Whatever it is, it's what got me onto this. Because this has been a while. Like, this has been a while since I started doing the stretching upstairs. It's just been churning in my brain. Like, what the heck? What is going on? And what's going on? Now, two things I will say this about his music and Regina Spektor's music. Okay? Both of them really, really slam the... like churches and really, really slam like old Bible stories, I think. Like Like they rewrite. Oh, that's right. Like Regina Spektor goes after like the Samson and Delilah story and says like she loved him better because she gouged out his eyes. And I was like that's really violent. And like he talks about like going to church is like having like it's they both talk about it. Now I never noticed that before. I've listened to both of their music. But then I heard that speech about the Christian church being the number one persecuted, and I finally got stats on that. Now, like that after, and we've talked about it before on Twitter about the Christian church being number one persecuted. But I didn't know the stats, and I didn't know the laws in America were becoming so harsh. I didn't know we were actually outlawing pastors from actually talking in America. I knew some publishing stuff had happened, but I didn't realize we were actually like making specific laws against pastors. And you guys know, like I've been saying, when I first started learning this stuff a year ago, I was like, look, it's freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and equality for all. Those are my big things. Like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, equality for all. Those are my big three things. And I think all Americans agree on those things. Like I really do. And I was just like, there are people being arrested in Canada for saying things that are similar against Islam, like criticizing or doing cartoons or any. There are people with like fatwas on their heads for saying similar things here in America. Like there's national, international incidents for saying similar things about Judaism, saying similar things about Hinduism, any other thing. But here are two artists that are saying things about the number one persecuted religion in the world. And it's being promoted. Not only is it being promoted, but they're white artists. And they also look similar. They have dark hair. Like, that's one of the things I was trying to churn out. Like, what is it about these two artists? What is it? And then I finally realized, tonight I realized something. All right, so guess what? I was just sitting there in bed and I was just like, I was falling asleep and it hit me right before I fell asleep. Maybe it's because I finally went to bed early. It was like at 10 o'clock or something. But did you guys notice something? All right, so this is Hozier, right? This is what he looks like. That's what he looks like, right? That, it suddenly struck me. I was like, did you guys ever see this movie? This one called Young Victoria with Emily Blunt. So that's the guy from Homeland. Like, I don't ever remember his name. I'm just like, hey, it's Homeland guy. He did such a good job on Homeland. Such a good job on Homeland. But to me, he'll always be Homeland guy. So, who died a horrible death. But he did a great job on this too or whatever. But if you compare the photo, like all of a sudden it popped up in my head, his face, and I was like, Hozier looks like this guy. Like Hozier looks exactly like this guy. And if you like think of a close-up of this guy, hold on. Okay, this is actually Prince Albert. Can you see that? Like, that's actually Prince Albert, the guy who married. Like, that's who married Victoria. And that's Hozier. They say Hozier is Irish, but that's Prince Albert. Like, watch. Okay, like, that's Hozier. They put Hozier in dark blue a lot. And then that's Prince Albert. They put Prince Albert in dark blue a lot. I don't even know. I feel like I'm not switching it fast enough. So, like, that's him. And that's him. Like, I'm not even kidding. A, B, A, B. And it's the same with Regina Respect. I'm telling you, like, if you can go on and look for yourself. You can go on there and look for yourself. Prince Albert. And the thing is that Prince Albert he's German. Like, Prince Albert's German. They'll say all these different things, but Prince Albert's German. And look at this. Okay, so my point about this is that you might be like, well, what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything? All right, well, let me trace this back for you. Like, Prince Albert comes along and marries Victoria right at they begin the House of Windsor, basically. Like, they begin the House of Windsor. There were all these other houses that used to come before. If you watch Young Victoria, they didn't want her marrying him. And they say, oh, he's a Protestant, but really he had all the external family was tied to the Roman Catholic Church, and she was Protestant. They didn't want her marrying him, and it was increasing that it did a different kind of family line. Remember how they said that they thought he was too common? He was too common. Did anyone notice that his first name was Francis Augustus? Francis Augustus? Guess what Francis comes from? It comes from, it ties into the Rothschild, the very, very similar crest, the Rothschilds and Queen Victoria. And we've been noticing all this. Let me tell you why these coats of arms are so important. Let me just, for those of you who have not been following us on Twitter, let me show you why it's been, what we've been doing on Twitter really quickly so you can see why this matters. Okay, so for example, we've been seeing this kind of, great, you can't see this. Okay, you know what, I'm going to change my lights, hold on. Yeah, I know I need to get one of those programs, and all my friends know all about them and everything like that. I just need to be able to be out of pain long enough to actually learn them or whatever and download everything, get it all done. So anyway, so can you see this right here? So that is on the Marlboro packaging for cigarettes, right? For tobacco. This coat of arms has been on the tobacco cigarettes forever. And if you guys notice this in here, it actually has a saying. It says Veni Vidi Vici. Yeah, you know where that's from? That's from this. That's from Caesar, Julius Caesar. So, I came, I saw, I conquered. That's where that's from. I came, I saw, I conquered. Do you know what that's like to know that that's sitting there on your Marlboro cigarettes? And tobacco, we've learned, is the major crop of Germany all the way back to Frederick. Massive, massive German Empire, their big, big tobacco crop. That's why you don't hear a whole lot about it. They don't want you to know how much it was tied to Americas and stuff like that. But it's the big, big export for Germany. The kings love tobacco. And then on the Marlboro packaging, it says, I came, I saw, I conquered, with a royal seal on it. So first of all, royal seal, that's what I want to get into. Then we hear bear. So then we get things like this. Bear, big German empire that's around the world. Then we see things like this. We find little things like this. 1904, Leverkusen. That is a town in Germany. And we're like, well, what the heck? This has been around since 1904? What are you talking about, right? So we see these kind of things floating around online. And we're like, what do you mean you've been around since 1904? What do you mean that there's a seal that looks like a royal seal with red lions? Why do we care about red lions? Well, because red lions are showing up everywhere on these walk away campaign things. They finally said that they want to sign on with Trump, but I think that's because they're finally seeing all the stats and data that he's going to win no matter what. But they sure waited to the last minute, didn't they? So, but all their events are sponsored by Red Lion, Red Lion, Red Lion. So we're suddenly paying attention to red lions. So they have red lions. So we go ahead and look up the red lion, and it could mean something like this. We go ahead and we look up the red lion on crest, and guess what that's linked to? That's linked to the family Hess. What is the family Hess? We look up the family Hess. We look up the family Hess, and well, I looked it up or whatever, and the family Hess could be actually linked to, goes all the way back to, closely tied to the Roman Catholic Church. In Germany, it's a German family crest, German family name with red lions or whatever. And you're just like, all these things are turned, and you don't know how closely involved they are with bear and how closely, and you're just starting to get you're like, what are all these? That's why it matters that's why we're starting to get interested in it. And what are all these logos meaning? So then we find out that BASF has a logo like this. It has another royal crest on it. It has the crown at the top, and then it has this recurring theme that we keep seeing. We have seen, they keep removing it. We have seen previous ones where it actually had a unicorn at the top, and then a lion, a unicorn and a lion. And that's where this really matters, because then we were told that was Rothschild, but I learned this night that it's not. But anyway, there are many, many coats of arms. And this is what I found out. So let me show you. All right, so let's start here and we'll go back. So this is what I found tonight. So BASF really matters because we have been told that it looks like this, the Rothschild family crest. We've been told that, hey, this is the Rothschild family crest. And it turns out that no. And we thought that, hey, that means that this is linked to it. That means that BASF must be linked to it. And all the research looked like it was based in Germany, in the same exact towns, in the same exact cities. Everything pointed to it. Until tonight, when I found out that, oh, what's this? There it is. Crowns, unicorn, lion. Same exact seal. Unicorn, lion, and the crowns. Same thing we've been seeing everywhere. And I've seen it on a lot more. We've talked about it on Twitter. We've been seeing this unicorn, lion, and crown. We've been seeing it all over on these major companies around the world. We've even seen them in Iran. We've seen them on oil companies. We've seen these things sneaking around all these different places. And what they do is they say they're one thing. They have the company name something else, but then they sneak on these little images of, like, you know, a unicorn and a lion, or like you saw it with like the BASF logo, right? Well, this lovely logo, my friends, is actually Queen Victoria's logo with Prince Albert. And on it, it says, Dieu est mon droit, which means God and my right. But that's not Prince Albert's, that's hers. Hers and Prince Albert's that she made. His, well, actually, and hers is based on, his is different. His says something in German. His actually has a different one, and it looks a little different. Let me show you his. So his actually looks like this. And then we've seen this one everywhere. We've seen that everywhere. We've seen that all over the place. That's Prince Albert's, and he's German. He is from a different, you look up House of Windsor, but it actually goes back. It actually goes back, and it they have a different name for it, and they'll keep renaming it different names or whatever, but the kings changed the name because of World War I, because Germany got a bad name, so they changed the name to House of Windsor. That's something that sounded a little bit more British. But guess what? If you look up Prince Charles's, Prince of Wales, his crest actually says Ich Dein. His crest says something in German. A number of their crests say things in German. So that's kind of good to know. It kind of explains why Kate has the dark hair and why they go dark with their hair, and why maybe Princess Diana was a little bit of a disappointment. I'm just like, wow, this is why why Blair and, you know, all these things. Anyway, so these crests really, really matter. This is Henry VIII's crest. All right. And if you notice, and this is something to really point out and be aware of, this is actually a dragon here. The crests today are all like bears and lions and things like that. They haven't done a dragon, or maybe this is a winged, maybe this is not a winged, maybe this is a winged something else, but it looks like a dragon to me. It's got a tail and everything like that. You have to look it up. But anyway, this is Henry VIII's, but it says the exact same thing. The God and my right. And that's the thing, is that crest began in the medieval times. Crest didn't exist in the Roman times. And that's something to really be paying attention to, because that's something the American Revolution broke up. And so my point in all of this is saying that if you look into it, the Rothschilds didn't have a crest until right before he gets married. Prince Albert actually gets married to Victoria. And that's very, very interesting. They're cousins. And so you'll find documentaries and they'll be like, oh, isn't it funny, haha, how their crests are so similar. Well, their crest, the Rothschild crest, it's very similar. The only thing that says differently, it has a few less arms on it or whatever, but basically it says industry on it. It's like harmony and industry. And what that is basically they go through, it's basically their bank. I mean, it has the crest of Victoria on it. It has all these crests. You can look through the one that they say is the Rothschilds, that we've been told is the Rothschilds. That's actually Victoria's crest all throughout London. That's just her crest. That's not the Rothschild crest. That's Victoria's crest. That's Victoria's crest. That's not the Rothschild crest. That's Victoria's crest. And if you look it up, you will find out that all throughout the world, there's what's called Augusta Victoria Mines. There's Augusta Victoria Mines in Australia. There's Augusta Victoria mines in Germany, and they'll say, oh, they're shutting them down, or oh, they were sold to this bay, or oh, they were sold this. But the fact of the matter is that right after America is formed, all of a sudden these colonies, all of a sudden Britain and Germany unite. And so this is my point, is what I want to say. Let me show you what I'm thinking. All right, so if you are the royal families of Europe, so basically the Pope is sitting here in Rome, right? He's in Italy. They've been ruling for 2,000 years or whatever. I want to read to you. Remember how I said that I believe that they actually turned the Roman Catholic Church? I believe they turned it into the Roman Catholic Church. And I said that it's not a Christian religion. You want to know how I have proof of that? I found proof of that today. I'll read it to you. Here it is. Do you remember how I said the Roman emperors made a church in order to defeat Christianity? Christianity was starting to overthrow the Roman Empire. And so what they did instead was create a religion instead out of Christianity that they could control. Because basically what Christianity did was in the Bible has a bunch of books in it. It has Old Testament books, it has New Testament books, and there's this book in the Bible called Galatians. It basically means it's a city in Rome. It's whatever. It's a place in Rome. Don't know what it is, but it's a church in Rome, whatever. So it's a book in the Bible called Galatians, and I don't know what chapter and verse, but you can look it up. But it says that men and women are the same under God or under Jesus, whatever. But it says they're equal. And then it says slave and master are free and are equal. And then it also says like Hebrew and Galatian, or Hebrew and Greek, are equal, which is something very, very different. Until that, the entire Old Testament had been saying like Jews were set apart by God, and that they were this special people. And now that's the reason that the hierarchy of the Jews, got pissed and hung them out to dry or whatever, was because he said, I came for all, the entire world or whatever. And some Christians think that like there's all these things or whatever. But basically, that's a really, really tempting offer to be like, oh, we don't have to have a slave race anymore. Paganism only offered a slave race. Like an emperor that makes all the money, an elite class that serves that emperor, makes all the taxes off of it, has all the land, and then boom, an entire slave race that does all the work. And kind of what we have now. We have basically South America, Africa, and China, and India doing all the work for Canada, United States, Europe, and Australia. That's pretty much, we have returned to Egypt and all the pagan times. Like, that's it. We have this like top 20% that, lives high and mighty on the backs of all these people who are just kind of slaving away for pittances an hour. Right? Because that's why the firewalls are up. That's why we don't see what's going on over there, because these governments are dictatorships and things like that, and sustainable development. So anyway, comes along this religion that says created equal, and it just starts blowing up. And so they say Constantine converts to Christianity. Well, I finally found it. I told you, I was like, I really don't think it did. I told you that. And it said Constantine, did you know this? It says Constantine, Roman Emperor, and Caesar Augustus, Constantine I the Great, saw a vision, Kyrio, symbol of Christ, and the words in Greek, pronounced en tuto nica, usually rendered in Latin, since then in hoc signio vinces, in this sign conquer, before his great victory at the Battle of Milvian Bridge, on the edge of the city of Rome. Not long after, he liberated Christianity throughout the empire, later himself becoming a Christian. Although Christianity was not made the religion of the Roman Empire until the next emperor, Theodosius, nevertheless winning this battle seemingly by divine inspiration caused Constantine to defend and later to convert to Christianity. No, I looked it up. I looked up the popes that happened in between that time and the next emperor. They were building the church. They were building into it the Roman Catholic Church or whatever. At one point, there were all these bishops and all the people were created equal. And the very next time, all of a sudden, the church had all the bishops. There were all these layers within it. And they had an entire structure just like the Roman Empire. They had an entire state and it was an entire religion. They built an entire religion into it. And you look up Wikipedia, you can find it. It actually has names of popes, of all the first popes. They named all these early church bishops of Rome. They said those were the earliest popes, even though they weren't. If you look at all the church, it was a ton of churches over here. And there was like kind of one church in Rome, you know. And if you look up history, it turns out no Roman pope ever went to Jerusalem until the like 1960s. You know, where their supposed, you know, savior was born and died and raised again or whatever, what they say. Yeah, no pope had ever been to Jerusalem, even though they were like in the Roman Empire. That doesn't make any sense, does it? Like, no. So it doesn't, they put their whole, anyway. So this is my point, is that he says, Constantine the Great saw a sign in the sky that said, "In this sign conquer." And this is an actual drawing of it. This is what he said. "In this sign, conquer." Can you see that? There it is. There's this sign he said he saw in the sky. "In this sign, conquer." Does that sound like conversion to you? In this sign, conquer. That's not conversion. Let me tell you what that is. Let me tell you exactly what that is. That's this. That's the Pope greeting 1.5 million people when he goes to visit a city. That's an entire Catholic Church of people who don't have to obey the law. They can go ahead and violate kids over and over and over again, and they're never held to account. They can do anything. 4 reports have now come out. 4 reports on child sex abuse in the church have come out. They have all agreed. They have all made the same consensus, and all of them have said that there was a 1962 agreement by the Vatican that said, cover it up. Said cover it up to cover our assets, to cover the money up, to protect our cash. Not the kids, the cash. That's a dictatorship. That's an empire, the Holy Roman Empire. And guess what I learned about the Holy Roman Empire? A history of empire building. During the late 18th century, the Holy Roman Empire, located mostly in Germany. During the late 18th century, when BASF was formed, the world's largest chemical company that funded Hitler, that created World War I with Bayer. Late 18th century, the Holy Roman Empire, located mostly in Germany. That's where Italy, Germany, and then who's Germany married to? They're married to Queen Victoria. What happens when these royal families have all taken their assets and make 13 colonies right here? This is from an old video when I was doing sanctuary cities. But what happens when the royal families, like they all have crests, look it up, they all have coats of arms and crests that all have like a big crest in the middle. And if it has a buckle, it all means something really special. If it has a buckle, it means they're in this like unique club or whatever. But Iran has all this, Middle Eastern families have it. They all have these special coats of arms. It says something that the Middle Eastern families have them that tells you something. They're linked to it, right? All these families have these coats of arms. Romania has it. They all have them still. They all have these coats of arms that they've had since medieval times. What happens when you do 13 colonies that are making you hella types of money, big money, 13 colonies that are extremely, extremely wealthy? What happens when this entire family and this entire dynasty is making a ton of money trading all over and going all over and going to China and doing all this thing, had just done the Opium Wars, so they get hit in the Opium Wars and they had just taken down China. They had just finished out, what happened? They had just done the Opium Wars. Germany comes in right after the Opium Wars and it's like, you know what? The Rothschilds come in, they come up to the UK and they're just like, why don't we marry cousins, Victoria? And you know what's very interesting about what Victoria said in her letter? Remember I said the shine in each other's eyes? All she talks about, she's like, oh, he's so agreeable. He has big, large blue eyes. He has dark brown hair. It's like she's describing herself. Like the mirror image again. It's like reading a narcissist handbook. She's just like, oh, his face is just, he has pale skin. He has large eyes. He has blue eyes. He has dark hair. Nothing about his internals. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So no wonder. And so they knew exactly what to do. They knew exactly what to do, how to get, Germany knew exactly how to do it. So I'm sorry, but ever since we've had this nice little union between Germany and the UK. And if you turn to me and you say, well, I don't understand, there's a World War I and there was World War II, and didn't they have problems? Well, you watched Patton, didn't you? You guys play video games harder than the UK played in that war. And isn't it interesting that the bombing I never understood why all the bombings happened in London real estate areas and not the rest of the UK. Like, why didn't you take out the rest of the UK? Why didn't you take out all their transportation? Why didn't you hit all of the UK? Why did you just hit London? Like very specific, like you saw everything right on London. It just, but certain things weren't hit. And why is it that the UK didn't touch IG Farben? It wasn't just America who didn't do it, but didn't London go after Germany forever? They knew where IG Farben was. It had been there since 1865. It was the one funding the war. It would have been the first thing to hit, and it would have been over with. It was the one that started all the concentration camps since the 20s and the 30s, and the UK didn't touch it. But it turns out that Augustus Victoria had coal mines in Germany, deep mines in Australia. So I'm just saying that the Rothschild little family crest or whatever, that ain't the Rothschild money, people. That's royal money, in my humble opinion. Let me just explain how it works to you. Let me explain how it works to you, how they actually view this, so you understand how they view this versus America. I'm just saying what happened. I'm sorry, I didn't finish my thought on this. But when you have 13 colonies over here in America that are making bank the house and they get free, what is it that you do? Like, how do you survive? You finally got to keep a little bit of Canada, but you go and you start Australia. Like, this war ended in 1783. They landed here in 1788. Look at the size of it. Australia is like the same size as America. And over here, there's a bunch of mining things. They never fought a war to be free. India's linked as well. Very, very interesting. So let me read you what they actually think. This is what Pope Pius VI said about our Constitution. Pope Pius VI, the necessary effect of the Constitution decreed by the Assembly is to annihilate the Catholic religion. And with her, the obedience owed to kings. Constitution annihilated the Catholic religion and the obedience owed to kings. If you want a good reason for that, I found someone who actually summarized my research on that recently. Let me find her just a minute. All right, so this is right after the new pope was elected. And they had on an older guy who actually said that the new pope would actually be going out alone without any kind of assistance and would be going around the streets, offering assistance to the beggars on the street and dressing like a poor man. He said, I don't think he'll ever even wear like one of the staffs. And I was like, right. Like, it was such an amazing play. Like, I was like, yeah, so much for that. Stands in front of a million people with, yeah, so much for that. So, but anyway, so then they had Sinead O'Connor on, and I was shocked by what she said. This is way back in 2013. So I was totally shocked by what she said. So I don't actually know a lot about her, but I know she's a famous singer from way back. The most I know about her is they play some of her music for ballroom. She has some famous songs for ballroom. That's about majority of what I know of her. But I was caught this. I don't even remember what I was digging on. I don't remember how I found it. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what my research just did. I thought it was crazy. So I just saw this like 3 nights ago. She said it perfectly.
Sinead O'Connor. Sinead, there you are in what once was a Catholic country, still possibly is. Yes, we're waving at you too. What
She's
do you
in
make
Dublin.
of events in Rome?
Well, I guess I wish everyone the very best, and I don't know anything about the man, so I'm not going to rush to judging him on one thing or another, but I would say he has a scientifically impossible task, because all religions, but certainly the Catholic Church, is really a house built on sand, and it's drowning in a sea of conditional love, and therefore it can't survive. And actually, the office of Pope itself is an anti-Christian office. And the idea that Christ needs a representative is laughable and blasphemous at the same time. Therefore, it is a house built on sand, and we need to rescue God from religion, all religions. They've become a smokescreen, which is actually distracting people from the fact that there is a Holy Spirit. And when you study the Gospels, you see the Christ character came to tell us that we only need to talk directly to God. We never needed religion.
But
therefore, his job is impossible. God help him. So.
Sinead, if you were to go to Argentina...
And I was like, oh. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. She's still alive. I was just like, oh, that is literally what we just found out. Like, that's literally, she like verbatim, I can't even begin to find it or whatever, but that's literally like what we just found out on Twitter a little while or whatever ago, something with the Pentecost or something. We found out like how the entire church was built, what Acts, like the book of Acts was about, the actual Acts that I can't even get into. It's going to break my brain. I can't do that much tonight, you guys. I'm sorry. It's probably like 3 a.m. now, so I'm really worn out. Anyway, so I just thought you would be interested to know that, like, you know, the UK is, I mean, it's just very interesting to see. They didn't teach us that. They taught us all about Henry VIII. They taught us about the War of the Roses. They didn't teach us about Germany, and they really didn't push the German part. It's interesting to me that they didn't teach us about the mining. Oh, one other thing. Notice that right after this Prince Albert comes in from Germany, right after that, with the same insignia, they give right at the same time they give the Rothschilds the crest. Right at the same time they give the Rothschilds the crest. Then Reuters starts up, then the German Reuters starts up, then the French Reuters starts up, then Marx gets going in Germany. Literally, socialism was created right afterwards. I mean, literally, he moves in 39, and it's like in 43, Marx starts up. I mean, and she said that she liked him because of his intellectual ties to the intellectuals or whatever, and his writer friends and things like that. And I'm just kind of like, nobody looked at this. Nobody looked at this, and they all warned her off, and she was like, oh, no. And I'm like, nobody looked at the fact that just like socialism just blossomed and they all blamed it on these Rothschild bankers. And I'm like, nobody looked at who she was married to, the fact that he was German. We're not paying attention to that at all, or what family he was from, or the fact that he went to Italy. He went to Italy right before she proposed to him and met with him. Like, no one looked at this. And the fact that just right as they were doing Roman things, as digging got really going in this country, and when things started going really badly, then they did a Young Victoria. Remember when they started doing all these Roman movies all of a sudden? Then they did a Young Victoria movie at the same time and like really pumped up the monarchy. And I was like, why are they pumping up the monarchy all of a sudden? And they were really, in that movie, they really downtrodden the people. And I gotta be honest, you guys, Parliament was not that old at that time. This is early 1800s. Honestly, the people had not had the vote all that long. Like, America had literally just been born, 1783. We're talking less than 50 years, people. That's scary that this movie is like crapping on like the French Revolution is happening, like all French Revolution and I mean, it is just shocking to me that this movie is understanding all of that now, that the movie's treating all of that, like the people as such, peasants. It's really disconcerting. Oh, I think I'm waking up my husband. All right. I love you guys so much. Enjoy the videos if I have time to put them up. Please donate down below. I can't. When's the last time I've asked for donations? Crap. I have like big stuff. If you could donate $1 and make up for last month, donate $1 for last month too if you didn't. Yeah. Oh, if you could donate just $1 per month. Please, please, please. Thank you. I love you. Mwah. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Bye, everybody.